All right, good evening, everybody. It is 5:30. We will go ahead and get started with the pre-commission agenda. I do not have a president's report today. Are there any housekeeping items or discussion of the agenda from the commission?
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney.
I do have some questions on item number 4 on the consent agenda. So if we have a couple minutes to discuss that. This is the proposal for the agreement with ITD for a cooperative agreement for a statewide rideshare platform. And I guess two questions came up as I was looking at this. It talks about the cost of this being borne by ITD, though it only mentions a couple specific kinds of costs and doesn't really mention anything else. So I just want to clarify that ITD will be bearing all the costs for this, including things like advertising, publicity, those sorts of things that are an ongoing part of what we already do for commuter ride would be happening for this as well, I assume. Am I correct that ITD will be bearing all costs of every kind?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, as I understand this, and talking to the team, we currently have a system that's a rideshare platform that ACHD sponsors. This would consolidate all of these public transit agencies into this single platform that ITD will bear the cost of developing it, that initial implementation. Our ongoing cost will decrease from our current system. So we will have an ongoing maintenance cost for the software, but not necessarily we won't have the initial development cost, which is what ITD is going to bear. They're taking that on. We will be the if I want to say this correctly, the hosts. We will be hosting it, and therefore we will have some ongoing maintenance costs, but not it will be a reduction from what we currently are paying for our platform.
Okay, so when we're talking about a platform, we're only talking about software. Is that correct then? Okay, so it doesn't include anything beyond just software costs and so on. All right, because is it then, because the report mentioned previous agreements that we had with ITD for the same sort of thing, but mentioned some other contractors. Are those then just the like software vendors or contractors? Is that what those were? And now it's just a different software contractor that we're dealing with? What's the, I forget the name of it. It had some TripSpark. There we go. TripSpark is the one that's, so it's hosted, but previously there were other hosting services. Is that all that is? We're just changing to a different hosting service?
Madam President, Commissioner McKinney, that is correct. It is a changing of the hosting service. The branding, all of those kinds of things associated with the site will all be the same. It's just simply the host.
Okay. So in any case, then the ride sharing itself, meaning the infrastructure for the ride sharing vans and so on and so forth, that's a separate issue. We're simply handling the computerized platform that manages it.
Correct.
Okay. All right. Good. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Are there any other questions or discussion of the agenda?
Madam President?
Commissioner Nielsen.
Yeah, I just want to thank the team members who were out at Liberty Elementary this afternoon, meeting with the principal and some concerned parents regarding safe routes to school issues there. So thank you.
Great, thanks. All right, I think we don't have any other questions or comments. Over to you, Director Head.
Madam President, Commission, thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to visit with you today. As we start, I just wanted to take a moment and express sympathy on the part of staff and the district for to the mayor of Nampa, or the family of the mayor of Nampa and the city staff there. Obviously a big loss for our community to lose someone so early in their term and who's been such a public servant. So just wanted to take a moment and express our condolences for that. Commissioners, we shared with you last week that there is a gala coming up for some awards that the staff will be or ACHD will be receiving, and some staff will be receiving. This will be held on April 16th. We will have a table there, and just wanted to extend an invitation if any of the commissioners are interested in attending. with ACHD being recognized as the Employer of the Year as part of that, we'd love to have your participation if you're interested. So please share with Stacy your plan to attend, and we'll get you registered for that. Noted last week and wanted to reiterate that we do have an upcoming Neighborhoods in the Know on April 15th. We have over 20 different neighborhoods who have signed up for this event. The primary topic of this will be chip seal operations, and we'll be also answering any questions for the representatives. These have been really successful in improving our coordination with our neighborhood partners, and we're grateful for our communications team and all those who will participate in that. Wanted to make you aware of that. We have a major milestone coming up on one of our large capital projects that's ongoing this year. This is the State Street and Pierce Park intersection project. That project started last year. We're coming up on a major milestone, which will be the switchover from our current for the section there on the right that's now paved. Will be on April 2nd. Overnight, they'll be changing over, moving traffic into that. Then they'll be setting up some dividers, and they'll begin working on the center lanes for that expansion project. So it's a big step, quite a bit of progress that continues to be made. It's keep making sure that we keep those 2 lanes open in each direction. Definitely slows progress a little bit, but we are grateful for the community who continues to be patient as we work through this and continue to make good progress there. There'll definitely be some we want to make sure they're safe though as well. So there will be some things that go up, and again, similar to what you see there of the barriers that will go up on the other side of where we're working, so that we can make sure we can keep our contractors safe in that work zone. We wanted to recognize and show appreciation for some of our team members who helped with the Expo Idaho Storm Basin connection. If you recall, the Ada County has been working on developing a fairly large park there at Expo Idaho. You see the AC Boise Stadium there in the background. So this is to give you a reference of where we are. This was a relocation of an existing stormwater basin into the park. They incorporated it there. We've been able to incorporate some microtopography, which really helps slow the water down, improve the treatment that happens there. We'll be able to vegetate, they'll be able to vegetate that and improve how well that's working in that location. Interesting, as we've gone through that process with the county, there was definitely quite a bit of groundwater that infiltrates into that system. So there's going to be water in that all the time. But this team has worked really closely on the agreements, on getting on reviewing and making sure the plans will manage the water that comes through, as well as making sure that it serves the purpose of treating a lot of water for a lot of the area of Garden City in and around that area. The nice thing in all of this is that relocation has been incorporated into the cost that the county also paid. So this wasn't a major expense for ACHD, and we actually end up with a better facility long term. So grateful for that.
Madam President.
Commissioner McKinney.
Director, so looking at this picture, are we looking at groundwater? Is that what this is? They're at the water table level. So are we going to have a stagnant water concern here?
Madam President, Commissioner, what we're actually seeing is it's not stagnant water, it's groundwater that's infiltrating into the storm drain system throughout that area. And so the water that's coming into the park and into that basin is a lot more than was actually historically happening, or what we were historically seeing. So that's actually, the water will be moving. It does move out at the far end, when we'll move further into the park and eventually get outfall into the river. But this will allow for it to be treated better than it was historically.
Okay, so this water that we're looking at here, that's not the water table level. This is water that's actually flowing through, and so it'll essentially be a river, basically, and it's always flowing out into the Boise River. Is that fair?
Correct.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Commissioners, we shared with you recently about a public notice page that we have added to our website. This has officially gone live. Our procurement team and our communications team work together. Our public notice page is now live. We have ultimately all public notices per Idaho code have to be published in the newspaper or newspaper of highest circulation. We utilize the Idaho Press through that process. It's not a requirement to have this website, but this is really a positive step to make sure that we have good information out there for the public, where the public can now go and see all of our notices in one place if they're interested in what's happening with the highway district. There's also consistently been conversations with the legislature about moving to something more digital, where we can manage that just because of circulation not being what it used to be. And so we will have this site set up in case something does happen in the future. It really does provide a nice place for the public to go and see all of our public notices in one spot. And thank you to the team for their work on that. We do have the week we all wait for all year, Pothole Days, is coming up next week. So mark your calendars, be prepared to celebrate. We're excited. We've historically had a lot of success. We encourage and we'll be doing a lot of advertising of this, asking the public to let us know where they see concerns. We always have ways for them to do that, but this is a targeted effort so that we can make sure that we are filling those gaps and making sure that we have good resources. Last year, we filled over 900 potholes in 1 week, and so we're excited to hopefully, the end goal is hopefully that we're filling them so well that we don't have a lot of them continue to show up, but we know that the system is dynamic and is affected by a lot of different things, and so we'll be prepared to take this on and address those issues next week. Commissioners, each month as an executive team, we review a series of metrics. Today, I just wanted to throw out a few of them. These are going to be year-to-date metrics for February, so we're a few weeks behind as we review these. I just wanted to share a few of the metrics that I think are important and interesting to see kind of the health of the agency and where we're going. This year, as we've looked at the awards, our bid awards compared to our estimates, we're showing about 14% below what those estimates were. That means more money that we can reinvest, more money available to address needs that come up on other projects. So it's not necessarily all that money is just wide open and available, but we do definitely are tracking that and always are watching where our bids are. It's a good indication of the market and how inflation's affecting us, and that's been a really positive thing we've seen this year. Next, I wanted to highlight our vacancy rate. This is our employees and our vacancy rate. That 3.1% that we had in February that's the average rate over this year, compared to last year is down about 0.4%. So our employees are staying. We're excited to see that. We're excited to see good retention happening there, and that's a really positive thing. Because those employees who stay here and who want to be here continue to add value every day for the public, and we're grateful for that. The question came up last week about restitutions, where we got this, just to show you year to date, we've collected about $40,000 in restitutions through different claims that have happened where people have damaged our equipment, and we've been able to collect that. And so just wanted to share that. That's something we track. The other thing I'd just highlight is from our communications team about email subscribers. That's just from the beginning of this year, an additional 800 people. So we're well over 21, sorry. Almost 21,000 subscribers at this point in time, but just in the 5 months of this fiscal year, that's that kind of an increase. So we're excited to continue to see that. It expands our reach and our ability to make sure our message gets out. We've highlighted a variety of different ways that over the last number of months, the impact of the weather of this winter. And Really, I can report that we are seeing that in our metrics for our operations. And just want to highlight a few of these. Our sign team had a record-breaking year last year, and they're ahead of schedule of that already this year. We had the opportunity to visit with our paint crew. Now, how are we beating our metrics on paint? We haven't even really started for the year. It was really interesting talking to our paint crew about, in wintertime, our permanent crew members. We have some that switch over and go work on signs, they go, or they go help with crack seal. But our permanent paint crew members, they work on rebuilding the equipment. They talked about the impact of the new facility. This was the first year that they've gone through a winter and rebuilt. Historically, they were placing people on one side of the vehicle, pulling in the vehicle, had to back it out to get that person back out. They're able to all work in the same shop, support each other, call each other over to support when they need to add hand. They were able to complete that work far faster than they've had been able to complete that in the past. They were also able to keep equipment inside that would otherwise have been impacted, and they would have had to winterize in other ways. And so I just wanted to share that. I thought that was such a great news story to hear the impact of that new facility. And so thank you again, commissioners, for your support on that. We've shared with you from our compliance perspective, our brooms and our drainage crews are well ahead of schedule in meeting our requirements from an environmental and water quality standpoint. They've made great progress and gotten into areas that they otherwise would not be able to do. And so we can't expect that every single year because winter does come, but we're grateful for the opportunity to see that. Our grade crew is well ahead of the number of miles that they've ever been able to do from a shouldering perspective and the miles they've been able to treat. Also would mention just a highlight from our utility crew. Last year in February, they had over 600 work orders in the system. This year in February, they're down to under 300 at 299. That team has been working really hard to be as efficient as possible in meeting those work orders and getting those completed. What that means really is that our response time when we have a work order come in, a request from the public come in, that we will expect to see the ability to turn that around even faster. Obviously, all work orders are different, and you can't expect that every single one's going to take us the same amount of time. But I really think that's impressive to see the impact that we've had. We've also been able to repurpose some positions and expand that because of their effectiveness, wanting to make sure that they're really able to accomplish that. And so we're seeing the impact of that. And so I just wanted to highlight just a few of our crews. We have other crews that continue to make great progress too, but this is just exciting to see in our operations team and brag about them a little bit today. Commissioners, we have today our policy update hearing. And you see some things coming up in April. Wanted to just highlight March 31st, that will be the memorial service for Mayor Hogaboam from Nampa at the Fort Idaho Center at 5 p.m. Our crews are prepared to also support that from a traffic management because that's going to be kind of going on at the same time as the evening rush hour. And so our crews are going to be prepared and standing by for that. You also see some of the other items that are up and coming. Our equipment rodeo that Thursday. It's been confirmed that Thursday is the day to show up if you want to show up for lunch. You also have some of the other things coming up, including Kids Day on the 23rd. With that, commissioners, I will stand for any questions.
Thank you. Any questions? Commissioner Goldberg?
Could you click back a couple to the commission schedule? There we go. Which date in April is the fee update hearing?
Madam President, Commissioner, that may get shifted around today.
Because of the change.
It's probably going to be towards the end of the month of April. Where based on some of the conversation, you'll see some more conversation about that today during our hearing.
Any other questions? All right. Thanks
you.
so much for the report. And with that, we'll be at ease until 6 o'clock. All right, good evening, everyone. It's now 6 o'clock and I'll call the commission meeting to order. Thanks to everybody joining us in person and online, and please join us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, the first item is to adopt the agenda. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
Okay, is there any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is the consent agenda. Items on the consent agenda are considered to be routine and will be enacted by one motion. There will be no separate discussion on these items unless the commissioner or citizen so requests, in which case the item will be removed from the consent agenda and placed on the regular agenda. All consent agenda items are commission action items unless noted. I don't believe we have any requests to remove any consent agenda items. Is there a motion?
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney.
I move that we approve the consent agenda as presented.
There's a motion. Is there a second? Okay. Any discussion? Being none, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay. Any opposed? Motion carries. Next up is the regular agenda. We've got one item on the regular agenda. It's ordinance number 256, amending Title I and Title II of the Ada County Highway District Code. It's a request for adoption and a public hearing, which I will now open and turn it over to you.
Madam President and members of the commission, for the record, my name is Scott Spears, Assistant General Counsel to the Ada County Highway District. And this is the public hearing and can't hear me?
There you
Up a
go.
little
There
higher?
you go.
Is
That's
that better?
That's better.
Okay, sorry about that.
Oh, is this a speaker as well as a microphone? Okay.
I got your back, Scott.
This is the ordinance hearing for ordinance number 256. Again, Scott Spears, Assistant General Counsel. Notice of this public hearing was published in the Idaho Press Tribune as per law, March 17th and 18th, 2026. Reasons for these policy changes are to bring ACHD code and policy in line with current practices and organizational structure. Also for consistency with recent changes in Idaho law, also for public safety, and also for enhanced accessibility for all users. And I just want to touch on that briefly. The commission will recall that back in 2019, the commission approved an agreement with MIG for an implementation assessment and recommendations project. And December 21st, the commission adopted the ADA compliance audit that was submitted by MIG, which included a matrix for proper operations. And then in June 7th, 2023, the commission adopted Ordinance 250, which regarded sections 7200 through 7204, which implemented and referenced ProWAG. And that was all work that was done by MIG, our consultants. And following that effort, they went through our policy from top to bottom and recommended changes for implementation of ProWAG throughout our entire policy. And much of that is what you will see and have seen in this process. Again, the sections affected by Ordinance 256, there are a lot of them. I won't name them all, but I will now go through a brief summary. Section 1000, General Administration, regards the organization of ACHD and the commission meetings and procedures and amendments within there. amendments in section 2000, general administration regarding procurement of goods, services, public works, construction, the sale, transfer, and exchange of surplus real property, and as I noted, references to PROAG within that section. In section 2500, changes for personnel policies. In section 3000, project design, again, references to PROAG, accessibility requirements and design standards, provisions regarding bridge load ratings. And section 3100, considerations for pedestrian facilities and accessibility during design and plan phases, and inclusion of the livable streets performance measures plan. In section 4000, right-of-way acquisition and management, again, references to the ADA and PROAG in prohibiting the impeding or restricting the use of public right-of-way until the vacation is authorized. In section 5000, traffic and transportation, references to the accessibility compliance section of the traffic engineering section. That was a new section. Section 5100, traffic engineering, provisions for accessible pedestrian signals and detectors, references to the ADA and PROAG for pedestrian facility design for new facilities, alterations, and temporary facilities, and for pedestrian access routes within street crossings, references to PROAG in relation to the traffic control plan review, provisions for engineering and traffic studies for closing pedestrian crossings, including proper signage, provisions for traffic calming, including a policy for radar feedback signs, and again, references to PROAG in regards to roundabouts. In section 5200, traffic operations, references to PROAG in relation to traffic signals and sign locations. In section 5300, van pool, more references to PROAG in relation to van pool signage, and also providing for driver termination and reinstatement and driver reporting of violations. In section 6000, permits and inspection, references to PROAG in the definitions, standards and specifications, sidewalks, and regarding temporary highway and public right-of-way use permits, amending provisions and requirements relating to construction site discharge control, including plans and amending drainage requirements, and a new section 6009 pertaining to temporary traffic control, providing for annual temporary traffic control permits and site-specific temporary traffic control applications. In section 8300, construction site control program, amending procedures and technical requirements. And finally, in section 9000, maintenance services, amending provisions, assigning responsibility for weed control within the public right-of-way. Public outreach for this ordinance was astounding. In February 25, some 20,600 recipients received an email inviting them to a web link to make comments, to review the ordinance and to make comments. February 27, staff conducted a focused policy review summit regarding the traffic control policies. Beginning March 2nd, the proposed amendments were available to the public on the district website for review and comment. Notification of the proposed amendments was sent to all advisory committees. And again, notice of this public hearing was published as per state law. Concerning public comments, 6 members of the public commented. In addition, Idaho Power submitted a comment concerning section 6000, the traffic control provisions, as did the Associated General Contractors, submitted fairly lengthy comments and recommendations. And all of those comments were in the packet and on the, as an attachment for this agenda item. The commission options concerning ordinance 256 at this time are to adopt it as presented, to make revisions to the ordinance and adopt the ordinance as revised. The commission may also adopt portions of the ordinance and remand the remaining portions to staff for another public hearing, which would be renoticed under a new ordinance number. And of course, as an ordinance, a supermajority is required for adoption. And staff recommends that the commission adopt ordinance 256 as presented, with the exception of section 6,000, which is exhibit A, which would be remanded to staff. And the reason being the substantial comments that we received concerning traffic control policies. And with that, the next steps, if this ordinance is adopted, it would be effective April 25th, 2026, following publication as provided in Idaho law. And with that, I would stand for any questions.
Thanks, Scott. Are there any questions?
Madam President.
Commissioner Pickering?
Thank you, Scott, for your presentation. Do you mind explaining to folks online or just the general public how we went about as a staff, how the team went about this process in updating, just very generally, like a high level summary?
Madam President, Commissioner Pickering, yes, this has been, I would say, probably a 2-year effort. We first received all those proposals from the MIG group. Those went out to the various departments, and they began reviewing those, also their own policies then existing, and identified improvements, area for improvements. Other areas that were reviewed, legal reviewed some areas, procurement reviewed some areas. It was a real top to bottom effort that lasted over a couple of years, quite thorough.
Great.
Thank you.
Any other questions for Scott? Okay, thanks so much for the overview. This is a public hearing, so are there any folks who are signed up to speak on this item?
We do have one. My microphone doesn't turn on. Sakina Lesmeister.
Great. Come on down to the podium and state your name and address for the record. And you'll have 3 minutes.
Good evening. I'm Sakina Lesmeister, and my address is 2473 South Mariner Way, Boise 83706. And I am representing Ziply Fiber. I'm the local government relations manager. I just wanted to say that I support the staff's recommendation to set aside 6,000. We didn't get to comment on that as Ziply Fiber, but we would love to participate in having conversations about sections that we have concerns about. So allowing that would allow us to be able to have the conversation with staff. So that's it.
Thank you.
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney.
may I just ask a quick question?
Sure.
You mentioned sections that you have concerns about. Are they only subsections of 6,000, or are there additional sections of the proposed ordinance that you have comments on?
The sections that are specific that we want to have discussions are in section 6,000. So section 6,008, 6,006, there's some other ones like that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Thank you.
Thank you. Other questions? We have nobody else signing up to see.
All right. Nobody else has signed up, but is there anybody else in person or online who would like to speak on this item? All right. Seeing none, we will close the public hearing and bring it back to the commission for discussion.
Madam President.
Commissioner Pickering.
Thank you, and thanks for staff. This has been a lot of work. And I remember, gosh, 4 years ago when we had a little work session with the rest of the commission talking about our handbook and our ordinances and like, what are the things that staff feel are a challenge to navigate around that are out of step with the best practices of today? And as we discovered, even as individually as commissioners, oh, this policy was adopted by resolution, or oh, this was ordinance. I mean, it was just so clunky and all over the place, and having to rely on staff to use that as a North Star and guiding light as they deal with very complicated, challenging, and sometimes easy conversations with the development community or traffic control, right? That's not an easy thing to do. So I've been really impressed by the process that Scott and others have done to usher this along. And I think passing this ordinance tonight is as staff is presented, with the exception of 6,000, is the right approach, not just from organizationally. I think it makes sense for a lot of reasons, but also just for our taxpayers and folks that interact with our agency. It'll be a lot easier on them to navigate in those standards. So I move that we adopt ordinance number 256 and remanding section 6,000 back to staff as presented.
I'll second that.
All right, there's a motion and a second. Is there any discussion?
Madam President,
Commissioner McKinney?
one of the things that struck me in the presentation here this evening is that in the course of sending this out to the public to get reaction, there were only 6 people that commented. Aside from the comments on this one section, only 6 comments, which doesn't strike me as particularly overwhelming. If we're looking to take feedback on that one particular section for, a little bit longer and then come back to this at a future date, seems to me we ought to just leave the whole thing open and handle it all at that future date as well.
Thanks for
President.
Commissioner Nelson.
Yeah, I had maybe a similar concern, but I was, after talking with the director, I think it was some weeks ago, this draft represents a lot of input from our advisory committees. They were very positive on those. So while it may appear there wasn't a lot of comment, I think this draft reflects a lot of input from actually dozens of people who serve on our advisory committees and or otherwise engaged in ACHD's business. So I will support the motion.
Thanks, Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Yes, Madam President. I would agree with 100% of what Trish just said. But I do have one question regarding, are we able to take more input between now and when we had discussed section 6,000 again?
Madam President, Commissioners, Commissioner Goldthorpe, actually, we've learned a lot through this process, and we'll be instituting an annual review of our policies, so we don't end up with years and years of changes and being out of practice. So actually, Ms. Spencer, your clerk, is going to be leading that effort on an annual basis to ensure that we are staying in sync. And so that opportunity, really, we received those comments fairly late on 6,000. We felt like it was appropriate to ask for that deferral. Not that we believe that the policy is bad in any way, shape, or form. We just think there might be a few small tweaks that we can to make sure that we are in sync there. But ultimately, we think that there's opportunity as we open this up each year to continue to receive that feedback and incorporate any comments that we receive. So this is not the only bite at the apple. This is just a step forward to make sure that we are bringing things better in line.
I understood all that, but we just had a request tonight from the person giving testimony that we leave it open for them to make comment between now and then. Is that appropriate?
Madam President, Commissioner Goldthorpe, for section 6,000, absolutely. And that would be the section that we
Just
would
wanted to make
continue to
sure.
take testimony and continue to work on that.
Well, I want to thank staff. I know this was a really very involved process and took a very long time. And we did get input along the way. And I think that it's really important that these policies reflect our current practices. And so I like, the idea of having this yearly review to ensure that our policies are up to date and in line with best practices and with how our current operations are. I know like sections of this policy update include just our personnel policy and things like that probably wouldn't garner a lot of public feedback anyways. And so, yeah, I think that this reflects a lot of work and input and, appreciate that we're taking a little more time on Section 6000 and that we'll continue to have an annual review to make sure that our policy is in line with our practices. And so appreciate the motion and we'll be supporting that too, Commissioner Goldthorpe.
One last request, and that is that from the individual that gave testimony tonight, would you please put your suggested changes in writing and send them here so that we'll all get it in advance? Thanks.
Madam President.
Commissioner Pickering.
Yeah, I just want to flag that I really appreciate, Scott, you recommending that we defer 6,000. I don't want to belabor the point, but I think back to Commissioner Gold's piece around some of these sections are very internal focused versus 6,000. There are a lot of external partners that would be impacted in myriad of ways that us, if we're designing this policy, we just might not know what that impact might be, right? So of course we could come up with the fix if we take a little bit more time to figure that out. So I think that's very reasonable. Really appreciate the work that the AGC and Idaho Power did to give us that feedback. And that demonstrates to me that this is working and we're demonstrating that trust that we look to them as partners and making sure that this policy not only works for us, but works for them as well.
Are there any other comments? All right, seeing none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. All right, great. Moving on to discussion items and public communications. Anybody here who would like to speak to the commission? Kelly?
Yeah, Kelly Olson.
Oh, good. I'm glad she signed up first. Welcome. Just state your name and address for the record and you'll have 3 minutes.
Okay. Thank you very much, Madam President and Commissioners. I'm Kelly Olson and I live at 1307 North 13th Street in the Boise North End. And I have resided on this street for 38 years. And I have a working history, a very good working history with the ACHD. I want to thank you all. I think only one commissioner was seated at the time when they voted for funding for traffic calming on 13th Street in 2016. It's brought us a very long way, and I want to thank you for that effort. I don't think the job is complete. That's why I'm here tonight. You calmed traffic on 13th Street from Fort Street North to Hill Road. Okay, it's about 11 blocks. You have about 5,000 cars that travel that section every day. And we still see some unsafe speeds in sections of that street. But I do see improvements on the north end by Camel's Back Park. And I see improvements on the south end at North Junior High. And that's progress. But I think the job is not finished. We started this initiative in 2016. A few of my neighbors and I hosted an ice cream social with our neighbors. And we all had something in common. We hated the speed. We don't like all the cars. We don't like 5,000 cars traveling our small street every day. But more importantly, we hated how fast they went. Okay? So we had something in common, and ACHD started working with us then on all the steps that you're well familiar with, right? We had to do the neighborhood petition. You did traffic studies, you did public scoping meetings, you did engineering design, and that culminated in the construction of 5 bulb outs from Hill Road to Fort Street. And again, I think there has been progress. When we started, the average speed on 13th Street was 29 miles per hour. Your data last year showed the speed had been reduced to 25 miles per hour. And that sounds pretty good unless you live on that street and you realize the very unique features on 13th Street, very narrow street, a junior high, a small commercial district that's very congested, lots of families, lots of kids. We have an ice cream shop. Now we have 2 ice cream shops in that commercial district. And we have probably one of Boise's biggest regional parks, city parks. So there are a lot of unique features in that section of 13th Street that really demand that we control speed. I personally think that traffic circles would have been a more effective way to control speed on 13th Street. They were discussed, they were dismissed. I would encourage you and your engineers to go back to the drawing board and look at traffic circles as a very legitimate way, effective way to calm traffic. But I really do appreciate your investment in our street. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Kelly. Commissioner Goldberg.
I agree with you. If I had my way, we'd traffic calm every street that needed it in this county before we spend a whole lot more money on capital projects. But I'm just one guy. I would request that you speak with our staff about some of the successes or perceived failures of traffic circles elsewhere. Because we've been getting information or letters, emails very recently about one particular area of town where it might, and I'm not sure why, possibly be problematic for those. But there's Ryan right behind you.
Yes, we like your director very much. Madam President, may I respond to that? You know, I'm not a road engineer, although I have several of them in my family, and they all are quite opinionated. I'm an agricultural economist by training, so no, I don't really know how to really design a road the most effective way. But we've done a lot of research as just lay people, and we're looking at work that's being done in Missoula, Montana, which is a city, you know, smaller than Boise, but I would say more comparable to Boise, as well as Seattle, Washington, who have very effectively used traffic circles on very narrow neighborhood streets and had great results. So I think that, you know, there is a body of evidence, engineering evidence out there that, you know, your staff could take a closer look at. But no, I don't think it's one size fits all. I'm a strong advocate for keeping ACHD decision-making very local because I am passionate about the fact that roads and streets are a local issue, right? I mean, yes, we have big collectors and arterials that you must, you know, make sure you have very efficient traffic flow. But most of our issues, particularly in the Boise North End, where, you know, roads were not built for the kind of traffic that we carry today. So, you know, the challenges are great. But I appreciate your support for that. I understand that, you know, you don't have an unlimited budget, right? And you're not going to be able to calm every street. But you are changing how you do work, and I appreciate that. Your work on the rapid project implementation team, very innovative. And the timing's very right to come and fix these problems that we have in our part of the city and the county. And I think that it'll work in other parts too. Let me just commend you for the work that you did at 16th and Washington. And I think that you all know that intersection, right? It resulted in the death of a 16-year-old skateboarder. Needless death, right? You have done tremendous work, and I think that's been very, very effective. And that's not a traffic circle, right? So, you know, it's not one size fits all. But I certainly think that it might have been more effective than these bull bouts. You know where bull bouts work is if we heavily park every block on 13th Street. And most of us don't. And you know why? It's because of that darn Hyde Park commercial district. 9 restaurants and bars serve alcohol. And every night, somebody's car on 13th, almost every night, on 13th Street loses a side mirror and sometimes gets sideswiped. Okay, so we choose not to park on 13th Street. But if we did, we would continue to narrow the road and that would slow traffic. In fact, one of your engineers told us in the early part of the process that that's how we solved the speed problem on 13th Street is everybody just goes out and parks their junkers on 13th Street. And I choose not to do that. I have lived there for 38 years. I haven't given up on it. I really do appreciate ACHD's support, and Director Head has been there. He's very good at communicating with our group.
Thanks very much, Kelly.
Thank you.
Welcome. State your name and address for the record, and you'll have 3 minutes.
3 minutes?
Mhm.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Like you said, I'm Elaine Lee and I live at 801 North 17th Street. am here with Kelly tonight. Like Kelly and Suzanne over there, I am a member of the North End Neighborhood Association, the NENA Safe Streets Committee. I joined recently after that horrible accident in November when a young girl from Washington Elementary School was killed. This is the safety or lack thereof on our streets is something that's long bothered me. And after that accident, I decided it was time to stop complaining and take action. So here I am. I have just one very specific issue I wanted to bring to ACHD's attention tonight. But before I do that, I did want to add some thanks to the committee and ACHD for having implemented the 20-mile-per-hour zone throughout the North End just a couple months ago. And I perceive, and my family perceives, and most of my neighbors think that this has been a very good thing. I've heard a lot of positive comments about how this has slowed traffic. And in my experience, as I walk around the North End, my sense is that cars are a lot more cognizant of pedestrians, and I just think it's really made a difference. So I would thank you all for having responded so quickly and made that change. And I hope it continues. The issue I wanted to address concerns the intersection at 17th and Franklin, which is a couple blocks from my house. Basically, it's just, it's at the northwest corner of the Albertsons building there on State Street. It's not too far from where the other child, the 16-year-old, was killed on 16th Street a couple years ago. This is I would call this a sort of sleeper dangerous spot, maybe like a mini sort of quiet little Bermuda Triangle, or I guess it's a cross, so you'd call it a Bermuda Cross. But although it's very open and there's not as much traffic as there is on the main arterials through the North End, it's actually one of the more dangerous spots that I traverse on a regular basis. I think what happens is, and I wish I'd brought you all a map, but I didn't. I think what happens is on Franklin, which is east-west, I think a lot of cars use that section of that street to kind of cut through the North End rather than deal with all the traffic and all the lights on State Street. So they tend to be pretty impatient. It's wide open. It's not like there's not a lot of traffic, cars parked there the way there are on 13th. So they go pretty fast and they disregard pedestrians. And then on 17th Street, I think what happens is the cars get through, coming south on Harrison, get through that whole bottleneck that makes them impatient, turn right on 17th, and it can be a very dangerous spot. So I think a four-way there, it would go a long way towards fixing some of those problems. Possibly also like one of those big speed bumps, not just the little ones, but the big ones, possibly up to and including a pedestrian signal. So I'd answer questions about that if you had any.
Any questions for Elaine?
Madam President.
Commissioner Pickering.
Elaine, thanks for bringing 17th up. And I think we've historically looked at 16th and 17th as they have similar challenges, but obviously going different directions. And yeah, so I think like we've internally talked about 17th. So I really appreciate you highlighting that again today and offering some ideas and solutions for us to contemplate.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you, Elaine. Appreciate it. And thanks for your work on the Streets Committee as well. Welcome, Suzanne. Name and address for the record.
Madam President and Commissioners, I'm Suzanne Yaley, also a North End resident at 1408 North 6th Street, and I've worked very successfully with Ryan with improvements on 6th Street. I'm very happy with those. And we appreciate the neighborhood slow zone for the whole neighborhood. And what the project I've adopted for the committee is to help vehicle drivers park correctly. So after talking to Cody Homan, who's been coming to all of our meetings, we'll be working with the city of Boise to mark curbs in the north end to indicate no parking zones near the corners. Proper parking is essential to making the streets safer to cross near, for all road users. It's plain from parking ticket data, which I've got from the city and shared with Cody, that drivers are unaware of the Boise parking regulations regarding legal parking distance from sidewalks and stop signs. We feel that curb painting or signage would be beneficial to those drivers. We've been discussing this project with Cody, and he indicated that since Boise is responsible for parking related matters, we need to partner with them. So I've sent an email to Bree Brush in the mayor's office to get this process going and hope to have an in-person meeting with her soon, addressing things like, can volunteers paint the curbs? Do we need a certain number of corners signed up before we can do it? Do we need to pre-screen the corners to see if the neighbors would like painting or rather have a sign? Some people in Harrison have indicated they don't really want yellow paint. Could neighbors sponsor signs at the corners? How much do signs cost? Which I'm trying to get that price out of Cody, but I haven't gotten that price yet. So if anybody knows that price. What color paint? Who buys the paint? All those things. And would the city of Boise take on the project themselves? Anyway, we'd like to aim for September for that painting project. And then I was here, the new policy thing. It's very big. The outreach was great. I got an email, I got a text, and I looked at it and I thought, oh my gosh, this thing is so huge. And I started reading it. I read the personnel part and I read how the public interactions are supposed to be handled by the personnel. And I said, but they already do all this. They're already really polite. They're really nice. They're really knowledgeable. If they don't know, they immediately tell me who to get hold of. So they're great. The people, ACHD personnel on the street have been unfailingly wonderful to work with. So anyway, thank you for your work. I appreciate it. And
Commissioner Goldthorpe.
Comment, Cody Holman won't be telling you that price if he's standing in front of your face. Unless you're
email it to
he's
me.
further than arm's length. It's very expensive.
But how much is it? That's what we kind of need a number to work with. Should I keep squeezing Cody or?
Madam President,
squeeze this guy right here?
that's who you need to squeeze.
Yeah.
Not literally, figuratively.
Send me a number. Okay, they're cheaper than the radar speed signs, and
That's true.
we got some of those, and they are, I watch the people on North Harrison. Either they don't do anything or they slow right down to 20. So it's helping. So anyway,
Madam
Thank you.
President.
thank you.
Commissioner Pickering.
Suzanne, I just want to say thank you so much for responding to our texts.
And testifying for you.
testifying.
Sorry.
Thank you. And I don't want to assume anything, but I'm also on the Fatal Crash Review Task Force with Councilmember Jimmy Halliburton. And so we've talked about the parking and the paint. And so I just really appreciate you spearheading that and working with our team and reaching out to the city of Boise, because I think this is very much a joint effort. And obviously you're already thinking 5 steps ahead. And so, yeah, I'm sure we've got to catch up a little bit. But thank you so much for your tenacity and help with
Tenacity, yeah, he knows about that. Anyway, well, we just mostly wanted to catch you up with what
Thank
it
you.
is we're trying to do.
Well, it's also, Madam President, it's also very helpful to meet you three and put a face to the names as okay, these are the folks that are on the ground helping us, because it takes all of us. And
Yes.
so just appreciate that.
For Cynthia's minions.
Thank you, Suzanne. Really do appreciate that
Thank
update
you.
and all your work. So, all right, do we have anybody else signed up? Is there anybody else in person or online who would like to speak public comment? All right, seeing none, meeting is adjourned. Thank you.